Early in 2024, I've prompted Bing's Copilot as follows. A white, ring-shaped habitat with a diameter of 2 kilometers can be seen on Mars from above. The windows are partially lit, partially dark. In the center of the ring, there stands a radio transmission tower, which is 1.5 kilometers high. It's also wide and has several round platforms at its higher reaches. The sky is dusty and grey. The terrain around the habitat is mountainous. About a kilometer high in the sky, a white vessel, much like a space shuttle, approaches a spaceport. The 4 images Copilot has created based on this prompt are here shown. You will see that from top left to bottom right, the notion of the ring having a diameter of 2 kilometers becomes ever more credible. A spaceship can only be found in the bottom left image, but I still prefer the bottom right image because of the size of its habitat. I want immersive imagery, and am a little disappointed that Copilot has by far not given me a habitat of the huge diameter I've longed for. Nevertheless, in this case, the AI has, after all, outputted one image altogether already approaching what I have had in mind fairly well. I've been altogether content, not feeling tempted to change something for the present. I wanted a much bigger Martian habitat for a film I plan, a real rotating city from the middle of the 3rd millennium. But for the production of a full-fledged film, I so far anyway do not have the means. Thus, I so far just am trying out things, hoping to get inspired, or to make others notice interesting aspects of what I create, so that I'll perhaps be provided with better machinery. For another film project of mine, so far titled Farther Outside Still, I via Copilot have similarly stumbled into very different images than I had had in mind. I asked the Copilot for an image of several habitable centrifuges arranged along a bigger circle which would serve as their axes. I hoped I could show such an arrangement of resonances with artificial gravity in the rings of Saturn, with Saturn in the background. I tried really hard. Alas, among the best images Copilot produced have been this year, with a rather helical structure, and something as little convincing as this. One should appreciate how pretty, credible, and far away from kitsch these 2.5 rings the machine has also outputted are, but you'd in this case have to imagine the rotating habitats to be enclosed in the white casings, which would, unacceptably, remove them from view. Such an image also simply shows a much colder future than I had imagined, a future in which the architecture of space habitats vanishes behind nondescript casings. As long as nobody guarantees me that our future is going to look like that, I am going to avoid the creation of such outlooks. At some point I gave it up, spontaneously shifting my interest into the field of drafts for futuristic structures on the moon or on similar celestial bodies in the style of the 1950s. Copilot surprised me with this image. I took the upper part of this habitat, colorized it with another free online AI, and made out of it an image of the habitat Cassini 37, which you here can see. A detail one should notice here is how the shadows on the habitat and on Saturn run in the same direction. The Sun is that far away that no perceptible difference between the angles from which it shines on either structure can come along. This image I have made by hand, so to speak, in the freely available GNU image manipulation program, aka GIMP. GIMP allows an individual selection of parts of images, which one can easily copy with shortcuts, paste into own files, there enlarge or scale down, then paste on into a new image. My overall experience with Copilot's images is that one will obtain fairly well usable elements, which one mostly still will have to change a little, especially for the sake of correcting crude errors. This image here, for example, created by Copilot in response to a prompt for an O'Neill cylinder, shows that sort of a cylinder, the foreground part of which has a different red than the background part. The image also shows a rather nonsensical gauze, like a spider's web, in the backward opening of the cylinder, apart from a too big number of planets and moons. The lighting is nonsensical. The dark side of Jupiter is too light. It's totally unclear what should be illuminating it. So I have tinkered with this draft quite long, shoving the left end of the cylinder rightward to make the cylinder's red uniform. I had to unpleasantly rely on a smudge function of GIMP to create an inconspicuous transition of the colors. Copilot's draft showed a cylinder in too warm, too golden colors for my taste, so I have replaced the golden light it has had in its middle with a more whitish explosion. I do not care what might be causing this burst. Perhaps it is a futuristic mechanism of energy production, or some drive of the cylinder, or it simply is a catastrophe. What I've learned is that one has to make do with what one obtains. With the theater of the past, one also depended on the props one could get. One could not well build every piece of furniture specifically for the staging of a play. And even the most refined image creation software of times to come still will not always completely fathom what a user has had in mind after the user has put his ideas into words. A way to eradicate such deviations from the ideas of a user certainly could only be that a user's ideas are from the beginning filmed with the help of some helmet, like it's now already fairly well done with electroencephalographs or via other measurements of brain waves. I eagerly hope that I'll soon be able to buy a cap or a helmet of such a nature, which one can comfortably wear while asleep. An error of the image creator of Bing used by Copilot, which would be harder to correct, is the one that in this image, an object in an orbit shimmers like that's only possible in air. I often regret it much when such blunders occur in AI-created images which otherwise are outstandingly good. Such basically good images, after all, always mean a great relief when it has another time begun to appear that an image creation software had begun to decisively favor surrealism without having been accordingly prompted. Another quite well-usable draft of Bing's image creator presented by Copilot before an O'Neill cylinder has been this here, which I've easily been able to adapt with the help of GIMP to my imagination of a more slender structure.